I never thought a routine Monday could turn into something unforgettable. I walked into the office, coffee in hand, trying to shake off the Monday blues. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, maybe because I wasn't really paying attention. I had been working at Grant & Co. for 3 years, and yet I still felt like a small fish in a giant ocean. The office smelled faintly of fresh paper and sanitizer, scent I was strangely comforted by. As soon as I stepped out of the elevator, I noticed him. He was standing by the reception desk, leaning casually, as if he owned the entire floor. His hair was slightly messy, giving him that effortless charm. And his suit, though perfectly tailored, didn't hide the relaxed way he carried himself. I recognized him immediately. Ryan Fletcher, the new senior manager everyone had been whispering about since his transfer. I quickly glanced away, pretending to check my phone, but my eyes betrayed me. There was something about him, a quiet confidence, a presence that made the bustling office fade into a blur. I could feel my heart skip a beat. I knew I shouldn't be noticing him like this. Office romances were a dangerous game. Yet, I couldn't help it. "Morning," he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight that seemed to command attention. "Good morning," I replied, my voice slightly higher than usual. I cursed under my breath for being so obvious. Ryan gave a small nod and moved towards the elevator. I followed a few steps behind, pretending I had urgent emails to check on my phone. As the doors closed, he pressed the button for the 15th floor. I knew I couldn't let myself be this nervous in front of him. It would ruin whatever professionalism I had built over the years. But fate, it seemed, had other plans later that day. I found myself stuck on a project with him. Of course, I had volunteered, or maybe it was more accurate to say, I had been assigned to assist him with a client presentation. The office buzzed around us, but when he looked at me, all I could hear was a quiet hum in my ears, like the world had paused for just a moment. "Could you send me the last quarter's report?" he asked, sliding a folder across the table. I reached for it, our fingers brushing ever so slightly. I felt a spark. A cliché, yes, but undeniably there. I quickly pulled back, hoping he hadn't noticed. But when I looked up, he was already staring, not in an awkward way, but with something softer. Almost curious. "Thanks," he said. Then, after a brief pause, he added, "You have a good eye for details, don't you?" I blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments from colleagues were rare, and from him, even rarer. "Thank you," I murmured, forcing a smile. We worked in silence for a while, the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable. There was tension, yes, but also an unspoken rhythm between us. He didn't hover, didn't micromanage. He simply worked alongside me, occasionally offering guidance in a calm, measured tone. I realized I was learning more from him in an hour than I had from some of my previous managers in months. By late afternoon, the presentation was ready. We rehearsed it together in the empty conference room, his presence close but not imposing. I caught myself stealing glances at him, noticing the slight furrow of his brow when he focused, the way his lips curved into a faint smile when something went right. I wondered if he noticed me too, or if I was imagining it all. "Ready?" he asked finally after our third run-through. "Yes," I said, trying to sound confident. He nodded. "Good, you'll do fine." His eyes lingered on me for a second longer than necessary, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. Was it encouragement? Or something else? The client meeting went surprisingly well. Ryan led most of the discussion, but he gave me the floor at the right moments, making me look competent and prepared. I caught him looking at me once during the meeting, a faint smile playing on his lips, and I felt a thrill I hadn't expected. Back at our desks, the office was quieter. People had returned to their usual rhythm, but I couldn't focus. I kept replaying the day, his words, his glances, the way he seemed to notice things about me others never did. My mind wandered dangerously close to imagining scenarios I shouldn't even think about, scenarios where we weren't just colleagues. It was during one of these moments that my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Coffee? After work? I know a place you'll like." My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen, hesitant. Could it be him? Was he the type to do something like this, bold, yet subtle? I decided to reply, careful not to seem too eager. Sure. Which place? Almost immediately the response came. Bluebird Cafe, 6 p.m. Don't be late. My pulse quickened. I had walked past that cafe countless times, but never imagined going there with someone like him. I spent the next hour pretending to work, but my mind was elsewhere, imagining the evening ahead. Finally, 6 p.m. arrived. I left the office, my heart racing, unsure of what to expect. The city streets were bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, and the crisp air was a refreshing contrast to the stuffy office. When I entered the Bluebird Cafe, I spotted him immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, casually sipping a cappuccino, his eyes scanning the room. When he saw me, a smile broke across his face that made my knees weak. "Hey," he said, standing to greet me. His hand brushed mine as he guided me to the chair opposite him. "Hi," I whispered, barely able to form words. We talked for hours. Not about work, not about deadlines or presentations, but about life, dreams, and the little things that made us who we were. He laughed easily, a sound that felt like music, and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't expected. I realized that this wasn't just attraction, it was connection. At some point, the conversation shifted. He leaned in slightly, his eyes locking onto mine. "I've noticed you since your first day here," he confessed, his voice low and steady. "There's something about you, something I can't ignore." I felt a shiver run down my spine. Part of me wanted to tell him to stop, to keep it professional, but another part of me, I didn't want him to. I began, then paused, unsure of what to say. He smiled gently, as if he understood the turmoil in my thoughts. "Don't worry," he said softly. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just, let's enjoy the evening." We did. By the time we left the cafe, the city had grown quieter. The streets bathed in a soft silver glow from the moonlight. We walked side by side, talking and laughing. The office and its walls of professionalism fading into the distance. But even as we walked, I knew this was only the beginning. There was a storm of complications, waiting office politics, rumors, personal boundaries, but for now, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was only him, only us, the fragile thrill of something new. As we reached the corner where we would part ways, he turned to me, his expression serious yet tender. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Tomorrow." I watched him walk away, my heart both heavy and light. Heavy, because I knew this would complicate everything. Light, because I couldn't remember the last time I had felt this alive, and as I walked home under the quiet night sky, I realized that life had a strange way of surprising you when you least expected it. What started as a regular Monday had turned into the first chapter of something that could change everything. Little did I know, the days to come would test every rule I had about office boundaries, every principle I had about love, and every ounce of courage I had in my heart. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was only possibility. The morning after that night at Bluebird Cafe, the office felt different. Everything was the same: the hum of computers, the clicking of keyboards, the soft murmur of voices, but to me, the air carried an undercurrent of something electric. Every glance at Ryan made my pulse quicken. Every casual brush of his hand on the paperwork, or when handing me a folder, sent a ripple of warmth through me. I tried to focus on my work. Really, I did. But my thoughts kept drifting to last night, our laughter, the way he listened to me, the way he made me feel seen. I hadn't realized how starved I was for that attention until now. I found myself stealing glances at him across the office, pretending to type emails, pretending to review reports, but my eyes betrayed me. Ryan was busy, as always. He moved through the office with that effortless confidence, shaking hands, nodding at colleagues, and yet somehow I felt that he was aware of me. Not just as a colleague, but as someone he wanted to notice. Lunch came, and I debated whether I should stay at my desk or brave the cafeteria. I opted for the cafeteria, hoping I might see him. And luck or fate seemed to favor me. He was already there, sitting alone with a coffee, flipping through a thick folder. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up and smiled, that same gentle, knowing smile from last night. Not at all. As I sat, the seat felt charged, almost magnetic. There was a brief silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that held anticipation. So I started, nervously stirring my coffee. "How was your evening?" "Relaxing," he said, his gaze steady on mine. "Better than I expected, actually." I felt my cheeks warm. "Me too," I admitted softly. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he leaned back, observing me in that quiet way he had, like he was trying to memorize every detail. The way he looked at me made my heart race, and my thoughts jumble. I had to remind myself to breathe. Our conversation drifted from work to personal life. He spoke about his childhood, his love for early morning runs, and the quiet little habits that made him. Him and I shared bits about myself I rarely told anyone. My love for writing, my obsession with old movies, the way I always overthink even the smallest things. By the time lunch was over, I realized we had spent nearly an hour together. For most people, it might have been an ordinary break, but for me, it felt like a stolen moment from a dream I didn't want to wake up from. The next few days were a delicate dance. We worked together, side by side, careful not to let our growing connection spill too openly into the office. There were subtle touches, hands brushing over documents, shared glances across the room. The occasional accidental lean closer, but nothing overt. But as careful as we were, I could feel the office watching. Rumors were a dangerous game, and I had already noticed the occasional whisper when Ryan and I were seen talking alone. I had to remind myself constantly. Professionalism first. Desire second. Yet desire had a way of complicating everything. One Thursday afternoon, our manager called me into her office. She was stern, her glasses perched low on her nose, her fingers tapping the desk impatiently. "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with Ryan," she said, her tone measured. "I just want to remind you about workplace boundaries." I felt a jolt in my chest, a mix of fear and frustration. "Yes, of course," I said quickly, forcing a polite smile. "We're just working on the Henderson project together." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Keep it professional. You're talented, and I don't want office gossip to undermine that." Left her office feeling both relieved and uneasy. Relieved because she hadn't accused me, uneasy because the seed of suspicion was now planted, and I knew that once office gossip started, it was hard to stop. Ryan noticed my distraction immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. "Yes," I said, brushing it off. "Just a reminder about boundaries." He raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk tugging at his lips. "Boundaries, huh? Sounds boring." I laughed softly, but there was an edge of nervousness. "Yeah, boring," I agreed, though inside, my heart was racing. That evening, we worked late on a client presentation, alone in the office. The quiet hum of computers and the faint glow of the desk lamps made the space intimate. I felt a magnetic pull toward him, a mix of longing and caution. "Do you ever think about complications?" I asked quietly, not looking at him directly. He glanced at me, his eyes sharp but gentle. "All the time," he admitted. "But some things are worth the risk." I swallowed hard. The weight of his words pressed down on me, thrilling and terrifying at the same time. We were dancing on a razor's edge, professionalism on one side, desire on the other, and I wasn't sure how long I could resist tipping over. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Our work demanded late nights, client meetings, and tight deadlines, which gave us excuses to be near each other. Each encounter, each moment, pulled us closer. There were stolen smiles, subtle touches, and quiet conversations that felt like confessions without words. Yet every day, the tension grew. I noticed the way my colleagues looked at us, the whispers I couldn't ignore, the subtle glances that made me hyper-aware of every interaction. And Ryan, for all his calm demeanor, wasn't immune to the scrutiny either. He became slightly more reserved, as if protecting both of us from prying eyes. One rainy evening, after yet another late meeting, we found ourselves alone in the office parking lot. The rain fell in sheets, drumming on the roof of my car. I didn't want to leave. I couldn't. Ryan stepped closer, his coat damp, his hair sticking slightly to his forehead. "I can't stop thinking about you," he admitted, his voice barely audible over the rain. I felt my breath catch. "Ryan?" I whispered, my hands trembling. He reached for my hand, the warmth of his fingers a stark contrast to the cold rain. "I know we shouldn't. Not here, not like this. But I can't pretend my feelings don't exist." I looked into his eyes and saw something I had been denying for weeks: truth, desire, and something dangerously intoxicating. My heart pounded in my chest. "I feel the same," I admitted, my voice shaking. He closed the gap between us, and for a moment the world disappeared. The rain, the office, the gossip, the warnings, they all faded. There was only us, and the undeniable pull between our hearts. We parted reluctantly, knowing the complications awaiting us. But that night changed everything. It was no longer just a passing crush or fleeting attraction. It was real, intense, and terrifying in its honesty. The days that followed were a mix of exhilaration and fear. Every interaction carried weight. Every glance had meaning. We had to navigate the fine line between desire and professionalism, between secrecy and honesty. And then the first sign of trouble came. One Monday morning, a client complained about a missed deadline. It wasn't serious, but it gave our manager a reason to call a meeting. As Ryan and I sat there listening to her stern reprimand, I felt a familiar tension coil in my stomach. "I expect this project to be handled with full attention," she said, glancing at both of us. "No distractions." I swallowed hard, and Ryan's hand brushed mine under the table. I felt the familiar spark, a reminder of what we had shared, and of the risks we were taking. After the meeting, Ryan whispered, "We'll manage together." I believed him. But office life is rarely so simple. Rumors started to circulate, subtle at first, then more pointed. Colleagues who had never spoken to me before found reasons to comment. Emails were exchanged with veiled hints. The tension was palpable, and every day felt like walking on a knife's edge. Yet, through all of this, Ryan remained my anchor. He was calm, reassuring, and careful, never letting the gossip reach me directly, but always ready with a comforting word or a steady hand. He had become my confidant, my protector, and the source of a dangerous, thrilling excitement I had never experienced before. Then, one evening, after everyone else had left, he pulled me into a quiet corner of the office. "We can't keep hiding forever," he said, his eyes serious, yet filled with a soft intensity that made my heart ache. "I know," I admitted. "But what if it ruins everything?" He took my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing over my cheekbones. "Some risks are worth it," he whispered, "and I'm willing to take this one if you are." I felt tears prick my eyes, not of sadness, but of longing, fear, and the overwhelming thrill of knowing that what we had was real. I'm willing," I said softly. And in that moment I realized that nothing would ever be the same. Our story had truly begun, and the challenges ahead of his gossip, boundaries, and societal expectations would only make our connection stronger, more urgent, and more impossible to ignore. The days after that quiet confession in the office corner were electric. Every time Ryan walked past me, every time our hands brushed while passing a file, I felt a jolt of electricity I could no longer ignore. Yet at the same time, a shadow of unease hovered over me. We had crossed an invisible line, and the office silent, watchful, and ever judgmental, had eyes that seemed to see everything. Monday morning brought the first ripple of trouble. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails, when I noticed a group of colleagues huddled near the printer, whispering and glancing our way. The instant I saw their eyes flick to me, I knew. Rumors had started. I tried to ignore it. I focused on my work, answered emails with extra politeness, and kept my interactions with Ryan strictly professional, at least in public. But the whispers followed me, subtle and cutting. People would make innocent comments like, "Looks like someone's spending too much time with Ryan," or "You two seem awfully close lately, don't you think?" I bit my lip, forcing a calm smile. I wanted to scream, to tell them all to mind their own business. But I knew that would only fuel the gossip. Ryan noticed immediately. During a team meeting, he subtly rested his hand on mine, just a brief, reassuring touch. I felt my pulse quicken, but it was also grounding. His presence reminded me that, despite the whispers and the judgment, we had each other. But the tension escalated faster than I had anticipated. By Wednesday, it seemed that every glance in our direction was scrutinized. Emails from coworkers that once seemed benign now carried hidden barbs. I began to notice the way some colleagues would pause mid-conversation, as if calculating whether to mention something. And the look in their eyes said it all. They knew. One afternoon, I received an anonymous note slipped under my office door. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. Be careful. People are talking. You're playing with fire. Oh. My hand shook. I wanted to crumple it and throw it away, but I couldn't. It was a warning, plain and simple. My mind immediately went to Ryan. I knew he would want to protect me, but how could we shield ourselves from the office that seemed determined to watch our every move? When he arrived at my desk that afternoon, I was pale and quiet. He noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern threading through his calm voice. I handed him the note. His brow furrowed as he read it, his jaw tightening. "Don't let them get to you," he said firmly. "We can't control what people think, only how we act." I nodded, but deep down I felt the walls closing in. The thrill of our connection was still there, but it was tainted with the fear of exposure. By Thursday, the rumors reached our manager. I had barely managed to get through a report when she called me into her office. My stomach twisted into knots. "Sit down," she said, not unkindly, but with a measured seriousness that made my heart race. "I've been hearing concerns about the work environment," she began. "I want to remind you both, Rianne and you, that professional boundaries are essential. I trust you, but I need to be clear. Any distractions affecting work will not be tolerated." I swallowed hard. "Of course," I said softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "I understand." She gave me a small, firm nod. "Good, just be careful." I left her office, feeling a mix of relief and dread. Ryan was waiting outside, leaning against the wall, his expression unreadable. "They're on edge," he said quietly. "Everyone is watching more closely than ever." I nodded, unable to find words. Instead, I reached for his hand. He held it tightly, grounding me again. The following week, the tension escalated further. Every email, every meeting, every casual interaction carried a weight I had never felt before. Even our work began to feel like walking a tightrope, but the fire between us was uncontainable. At night, after long hours at the office, we would steal moments, alone brief touches, lingering glances, whispered confessions in empty corridors. It was intoxicating, but dangerous. One evening, as we worked late on a presentation for a high-profile client, Ryan leaned close to me over the keyboard. The faint glow of the desk lamp illuminated his face, highlighting the intensity in his eyes. "We can't keep pretending," he whispered. "Not just with each other, but with everyone else. I want people to know you're mine. If they have a problem with it, that's their problem." I felt my heart swell with a mix of fear and longing. His words were bold, daring, and exactly what I wanted. But the reality of the office, the gossip, the manager's warnings, the anonymous notes held me back. "I'm scared," I admitted softly. "What if we lose everything?" He tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his gaze. "We won't lose anything, not if we face it together." And yet, even as I nodded, I knew he was right, but the path forward was fraught with danger. The tipping point came unexpectedly. During a routine team meeting, one of our colleagues, Jessica, who had always seemed friendly enough, made an offhand comment. "Oh, look at you two, always whispering to each other. Must be nice to have a secret romance in the office," she said with a sly smile. The room fell silent. All eyes were on us. My heart pounded, and I felt Ryan's hand brush mine under the table steady, reassuring, but also a silent challenge. I wanted to shrink, to hide, but I knew that this was our moment. "Is that supposed to be a complaint?" Ryan said smoothly, his voice calm but firm. Because I assure you, everything we do doesn't affect our professionalism. We're here to work, just like everyone else. Jessica's smile faltered, and a few colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The room slowly returned to normal, but the tension lingered. I realized then that hiding wasn't the answer. We couldn't be secretive forever. That evening, we stayed late to finish the presentation. Alone in the office, Ryan pulled me close. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said. "Not from them, not from anyone. I want to be with you openly." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I want that too," I admitted. "But are we ready?" "We'll never be completely ready," he said softly, "but we'll face it together. And that's enough for me." The next day, we made a subtle but deliberate shift. We were still careful, but we no longer pretended our connection didn't exist. A touch on the shoulder, a shared laugh at lunch, a lingering glance across the room. We were claiming our space, quietly but deliberately. It wasn't easy. The whispers continued, and the occasional cold stare reminded us that not everyone approved. But there was a sense of liberation in no longer hiding. The risk was still there, but the thrill outweighed the fear. One afternoon, as we walked back from a client meeting, Ryan took my hand in public for the first time. Not hidden under papers, not under the pretense of a casual gesture, but openly. I felt every eye on us, but instead of fear, I felt power. We were together, and we were unafraid. Yet with that bold step, new challenges emerged. One of our clients, Mr. Henderson, made a pointed comment during a meeting about distractions in the workplace. While indirect, it sent a clear message. Appearances mattered. And not everyone would accept our relationship. We faced it together as we always had. Ryan's steady confidence bolstered me, and my support strengthened him. We began to realize that love in the office wasn't just about stolen moments in secret. At glances, it was about navigating challenges, facing judgment, and standing firm in the face of scrutiny. By the end of the month, we had settled into a rhythm. The gossip never fully disappeared, but it became background noise, something we could ignore. We had each other, and that was enough. But the story wasn't over. Office politics, jealous colleagues, and unexpected challenges were still lurking, waiting to test our bond. And I knew that the fire between us, intense, passionate, and dangerous, would only grow stronger as the stakes rose. For the first time, I realized that love in the office wasn't just about romance. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to risk everything for someone who made your heart race with every glance, every touch, every shared secret. And with Ryan, I was ready to face whatever came next.